It's a beautiful southern Indiana day. Mother's Day. Happy Mother's Day. It's so nice. I wanted to bring part of this production outside. In this video, I want to talk about an idea that's been on my mind about gear demos that say just using an interface is as good as using external mic preamps, or that plug-in compressors are as good as the real thing, or that digital modelers are as good as the real thing. And I want to break down some of these ideas as soon as I can be bothered to go back inside to the studio. We're going to talk about how analog is a cumulative effect, especially when you're building a song over multiple tracks. Small percentages add up, and that's the idea we're going to explore in this. All right, I want to start off in the beginning of this video by saying I got a lot more in detail, and I'm going to show you a lot more sounds than I originally intended on with this video. I was just going to talk in the video and talk about my thoughts on how people compare analog gear, like good sounding mic preamps, things like that, to just interface preamps, and how they don't highlight the differences. Over a full song, multiple tracks, they'll just play one track and it'll be a very minor difference sometimes, but there's a lot greater difference over a large track count. But I wanted to actually break that down and show it to you because it was apparent to me over doing a couple of new projects that I had the sounds there anyway. I just had to show them to you. And one thing that you need to pay attention to in this video is this microphone. This is a new mic for me. It's the Royer R10. It's a great sounding mic. I'm using a different mic for a lot of the video as well. I usually use this mic for my YouTube videos. This is the United Twin 87. Both of these microphones come in at around $600. This is a great sounding U87 clone. Pretty much indistinguishable from a Neumann to my ears. From tracks that I know were recorded with an 87. It's got that top end that's great on 87s. And this Royer is different, and they both work great. I'm going to show you the 87 on lead vocals and this mic on backing vocals. It was very easy to fit this in the mix on backing vocals, which they're backing vocals that kind of stand out. It's almost like lead phrasing over the main vocal with this mic, even though it's background vocals. You'll hear it. I've got to print stems off to do that, and I'm getting ready to do that now. The song's finished. It'll be up. You should be able to go listen to that song. And I'm also going to compare these two on drum overheads, because I had one over this one, the R10 over the hi-hat side, and the 87 over the ride cymbal side for my overhead. So you're going to get to hear that comparison as well. But I've been getting a lot of great feedback on the sounds I've been getting here in the studio. And I thought, well, I had all this material that I could show you to better highlight what I'm talking about in these comparison videos, where you just might hear one track through great gear and then one track through a budget option. And, doing it like that, and especially putting plugins on, you might not hear as great a difference, but I really feel like over higher track counts, it adds up. So right now I'm going Royer R10, and I'm also using an analog compressor, the Audioscape 1176 Rev D, Blackface 1176, the Audioscape version. And both of these pieces of gear, there's some great hardware or great plug-in compressors out there. I use them a lot. Everybody does, because most of us only have one or two, or, even a big studio is limited on the amount of compressors they have. So everybody's using plugins, but the hardware always gives you something different than the plugins do. Sometimes the plugins might be all you need, but other times, just like for this application, using it to do dialogue for YouTube videos, it's leveling out my signal in a way that you can't do with just a mic preamp or just your interface. and have it be leveled after the fact. The wave is still going to be the wave going in, and then you're trying to level it after using plugins, and it doesn't work as well as going into the interface with the hardware. Also, if you like this video, like these types of videos, go ahead and hit like, subscribe, leave me a comment. Another thing that I wanted to mention is, and I'm going to show you this comment right now, about this recent video I did highlighting a guitar plugin from Soundtoys, the Space Blender. I got a lot of great comments both on YouTube and Instagram about my sound going through this plugin. And a gentleman asked me, as you can see here, what was my signal chain? Was I just going from my amp sim directly into the interface? And I said, no, I was going into my BAE 1073. And he said, well, I figured the amp sim would do that job for you. And I said, you can't discount the fact that like a BAE 1073 or these Chandler TG2 mic preamps I have down here are the sound of analog consoles. You know, the analog consoles have a lot more transformers, and, you know, you might be going through multiple buses before you hit tape, but this is still giving you the sound of one of those channels. And the way I bust things down and bounce things down is to hit these transformers multiple times. I go in one time tracking, then I hit them again on the busing, and then again on the master bus before I print the track, the song. So it's hitting these transformers and this circuitry 2, 3, sometimes 4 times before the track actually gets printed and you hear it. So that's giving you the flavor of like summing or using an analog console. And I'm going to try and highlight all of that in this video. Before we go any further, before we dig into this video, I want to start off by saying I'm huge on putting limitations on yourself to get maximum creativity. Many times, this is how great music is produced, is by having limitations and really being experimental and trying out new things. So I don't want this video to sound court sniffery or anything like that. Especially for certain styles of music, if you know what you're going for and know how to get it, you can use anything to get there. A lot of times the analog gear is going to get you there quicker. And I also need to say that I'm a huge proponent of taking time, spending time with your gear, and really getting to know it inside out. Many times here in my studio, I've just been using a small potential of what the gear can do. And when you start talking about things like guitar effects, the menus are deep. You know, you can get really into these things and get sounds out of them that may not be obvious at the time. And sometimes the texture they have might not be obvious at the first moment you use them till you take some time with them and really dig in. And there's a depth and a weight there that you can get out of analog gear, out of guitar effects. But you really have to take the time and spend the time with them. And what really sent me over the top to do this video was I had a guy comparing a piece of gear. This YouTuber has a lot of followers. He makes rock music. It's a different style of rock music than I make. He does more of the modern metal thing with the clicky, super fast bass drums and the, you know, the guitars that are, you know, chugging and all that kind of music, which it's cool that he's making rock. That's not what I do here, but that doesn't matter. He was comparing a piece of gear I have to, and I believe it was an Audient interface preamp, and just over one track I'll be honest, the difference wasn't huge. There was a difference there that you could hear, but it wasn't huge. And maybe even for the type of music he was doing, maybe the audience was better for that. You know, it's got a harshness to it that might work better for that type of music. I'm not sure. But when you're talking about analog gear or compressors or guitar effects or amp sims, things like this, the effect is cumulative over the track counts. And there's a depth to songs, a 3D aspect to songs that only comes into play when you get into higher track counts. You're not going to hear as much of this on one track. So they never show this in the video. So be aware of this. So what you're perceiving is a small difference in the video that may seem like, oh, is it really worth $2,000 to get that mic preamp when I can barely tell the difference? Well, make a whole song with it like I'm doing in this video. Just listen to the drum track that I bring up here in a minute, and I run every piece of those drums. Even though I only have 3 outboard preamps here, I record one of the overheads, the kick and the snare through those 3 mic preamps. But I've got 7 mics hooked up, the other going into my interface preamps, but I always bounce them down through the analog gear. I take the time and I run the room mics and the other overhead and the crotch mic. They all go back through the analog gear, and I A/B them every time. And there's always enough of a difference to make me mute the tracks that were recorded with the interface preamps. It's a huge difference. When you're talking about things like drums and you need that weight, you can record them with the interface preamps, but then you run them back through the analog gear and that weight is there and it always sounds better. It rolls off some of those top end harshness, takes that edge off, the transients hit better. It's just, there's so much to the sound, so much depth to the sound that you can't even really do a video on it. And these people are showing on one track that it's supposed to be not much different than the analog gear, the interface preamps. And it just doesn't jive with me. So I'm going to do my best in this video to break down some of that myth. Shit, let's solo up some tracks and listen to this microphone, which is a United Twin 87, versus that Royer R10, which you were hearing earlier in the video. I like to use this mic for YouTube videos because I can walk around the room, it picks things up. I don't need a shotgun mic, a different mic than what I use on my music. I don't have to wear a lav. The one thing that this is great at is picking up the room, and also the thing that makes it a bit of a liability is it picks up everything in the house and outside. So if my son, my 5-year-old, is in the sunroom back there watching TV or watching the cell phone, I can't do videos in the day because it's picking that up. So that's why you see me shooting a lot at night. I like to work at night. I like to record music actually in the morning. I'm more of a morning person. Before we get into soloing up these tracks, I want to have a little bit of a conversation because I've been feeling a certain way about being able to make this music. Like, really lucky that we can put this music out now, working in our homes or wherever we work, and get it out there, when in the past, all while I was growing up, this was unattainable unless you had a record deal. You couldn't put out your music. You couldn't get seen on YouTube unless you were an artist. You know, you had to get your music out there through a record label. A signed artist, I should say. So I saw this thing on YouTube with Warren Haynes talking about, well, he talked about a lot in the video, but he mentioned that he didn't like being a session player because he didn't have the freedom to play the kind of music he wanted to play. He said he did a lot of vocal sessions instead of guitar playing because he couldn't play the kind of guitar he wanted to play. And if you're on YouTube, my guitar videos do better than any of these song breakdowns or mostly anything about gear. I do have a video on Rupert Neve that's done really well. Go check that out if you want to learn about Rupert Neve and the 1073s and the 80 series consoles. But these Nashville session guys, they do great on YouTube. But I've heard some of them say that, they're not really into playing bro country, but that's the job sometimes, So there's a price that they pay by doing music for a living, in that they don't have the ability to do the music they want to do except on their free time like we do. So we're kind of in the same space on that. Don't get me wrong. It's, all of us would like to be making our living making music, but it's not a reality for some people. So we have to be grateful to be able to do this and be an artist and still be creative and get things out and give it the potential to be heard and the potential to do well just by doing it ourselves. And I really feel like culture is coming around to appreciate that, especially with things like AI going on now. People, I hope, are going to start really appreciating the artists and the people that put everything they have into this and do it on their terms over AI or doing something, piecemeal to make something for somebody else, something that's popular. Most of the music that's popular music now isn't what I'm listening to. Being an artist and putting music out has really turned me on to a lot of great music, because I'll go listen to my stuff on Spotify or YouTube Music or wherever. I try and listen to it on everything, Apple Music, and then it will suggest other new music to me that's not the stuff you hear. It's not the bro country, it's not the pop stuff, it's not Taylor Swift. It's music like I make, but made by other people. And that's another great thing about putting your music out there. Leave me some comments on what you think about this. Do you feel like you're, kind of stuck and nobody's ever going to hear your music? Because it can feel like that at times too. But I really try and look at it with a positive tilt and be grateful that I have this ability, first of all, ability to play and do music, but also you have to be pretty fearless to put out something that you write. It's what you're saying, and hopefully talking about real shit, and getting that out there. Leave me a comment. Tell me what you think. Do you feel like we're in an unprecedented time and lucky to be able to put music out? Or do you feel like we're all just kind of shoved under the rug with, grouped in together into this pile of music that is never going to be heard? What are your thoughts on where music is at for people that are creating and doing it all themselves and putting that out there? I've learned that I can make music that sounds like records here in my studio. And that's a lot of what this video is about, is the gear that we use to make things sound like records. You can do it in the box, all in the box with just an interface. But most of the people that are doing that, that's another thing they don't say in these gear videos, where they say, there's not much difference between the interface preamps and the outboard preamps, or a plug-in compressor and a compressor in your rack. They're not mentioning that a lot of this music that is making it out there and doing well is a lot of electronic music or pop music that's sampled sounds. They're not building the sounds themselves. They're using stuff that's already been mixed, mastered, produced, and on that level that's like already there. They're just using samples to get those sounds many times. So if you're doing it yourself, the gear really plays a part. And let's listen to some microphones. So I'm going to play the drum bus on my latest song first. Let you hear the full drum bus. That's kick, snare, overheads. This is the ride side overhead, the United Twin 87, and then the Royer R10 is the hi-hat side overhead. And, you know, people think stereo overheads use the same mic, but it really does a cool thing when you use different mics as well. Then I also had room mics up and a crotch mic. And so I'm going to play that drum bus first, and then we're going to compare this overhead over the ride cymbal with the Royer R10 and let you hear that contrast there and how they work together on the drum bus. And then after that, we'll listen to some vocals as well that I did also with the same two microphones. So let's listen to this drum bus. So you can hear there, that's a big difference in sound between that right side overhead, which is this mic, and the left, the Royer R10. And the way that's all adding up makes a great sounding drum bus. And you don't have to have a matched pair on either side. I really feel like I was using a dynamic over the hi-hat side and this on the other side, the ride side overhead. And many times that dynamic mic over the hi-hat side would make the hi-hat too harsh in the mix. This way, I can bring up that Royer way more and get more of the kit than I could using a dynamic. And if I was using another one of these Twin 87s on that side, it would be the same thing, because I find that I have to play the ride pretty light because this is right almost above it. And if this was above the hi-hat, it's a lot harder to play light on the hi-hat. You know, you want to be into that groove when you're playing. So this is just another thing to think about with, you know, these aren't the most expensive mics in the world. Both of these mics come in around $600, but what it gives you, I use them both on so many things. You've heard both of them in this YouTube video for dialogue. They were on the drums in this song. This microphone was the lead vocal mic and the double mic and the whisper track mic, and the Royer was the background vocals mic. You know, they're great on guitar cabs, both of these mics. It's just getting into a workflow that makes things fast for you, but also gets you the sound you want without taking any shortcuts. I always find that the more I try out things, try different microphones on different sources, try different preamps going in, try putting my compressor on and comparing it to plug-in compressors, and as much as I can vary things, it always gives me a better result with my music. So let's listen to the vocal track now. I'm going to play the vocal bus for you. This is going to be the lead vocal, which is this microphone, and the Royer R10 on, it's called the background vocal in the track, but really I'm doing some vocal phrasing that's almost like a lead guitar part over a rhythm guitar part. It's just kind of ad-libbing, but it was thought out ad-libs, written ad-libs over the lead vocal. So you hear what I mean, and they're both running through the same bus, so they're both getting the same bus processing on that master vocal bus, the lead vocal bus. But it's two different sounds, but you're still getting the same EQ basically, and a lot of the same effects. Let's just listen. You'll hear what I mean. Down to the corner. If you want to meet me, surely we can go to the place you want to. It's all out there, right in the open. There's nothing you can't have if you want it. You got to need it down in your soul. Can't be shy. Don't be shy. It's for your pleasure. So, I was overwhelmed with how good those two mics blended together and the result it gave me. After I got my initial level, which with using the parallel compression and using the saturation I used, it took me a little while to get that vocal bus level where I wanted it. You know, I fought with it for a while, but once I got that vocal bus level where I wanted it, I found I could just throw in those background vocals on a different mic, a ribbon mic, and go through that same vocal bus, and it fit together perfectly and really glued together and sounded great together. Pulled up nice, just pulled up the track to where I wanted it to be, and it went in the song perfectly. I didn't have to do a lot of mixing after the fact. That's one thing I feel like most of us do now. Whereas, you know, back in the old days on analog tape, mixing was a whole different process. But the way we work now, we're mixing the whole time as we go along. And that's what I'm doing as well. And that kind of workflow, when you're tracking studio, is your mixing studio. And you're doing it all together. Analog gear really plays a big part because you can mix in the box and do a great job. Most of my mixing is in the box, but I do send my master bus back out through these Chandler TG2 preamps. Usually 99% of the time I like that mix better, just going through the preamps on the 2 bus before I hit the limiter. I like that mix better than just straight in the box without going through the preamps. And it's not a huge difference a lot of times, but there's something there. It feels more like you're in the middle of it. You know, you're surrounded more by music. It's more three-dimensional. And I usually find that's true about 99% of the time. I think there was one mix that I've done, one song I've put out where I liked the hybrid mix better. Where I liked the in the box mix better. All the rest of them, I usually like the one where I just went out through those transformers in that Chandler preamp. You know, but tracking is where you get the biggest difference, because for one thing, you don't have to put near as many plugins on for things like this as well. Doing YouTube videos with OBS on where I'm showing you the screen. You know, having this microphone going into this compressor, saving, not having to use plugins on there, and, you know, up your sample rate and all that stuff to get it to work right so it'll play on YouTube and not have dropouts. Having analog gear makes all that so much easier as well. And it's just like tracking a song. Going through the good gear makes a huge difference that you make up for on the back end, where you're not having to put on 3 extra plugins for saturation, compression. And many times I find that these mic preamps EQ themselves in a great way. On guitar tracks, many times I'll just put a high pass filter on. A lot of the times just put it on the bus, not have any EQ on there. And it works, you know, because I've got good amps and they're going into SM57 and a 545 Shure 545, which is like a 57 as well, and then going into good preamps, and it makes it where I don't have to EQ things unless I'm looking for a hard mid-range push or something like that, and a lot of times I can get it out of the amp. So all this is to say that record how you want, especially if you're first getting into it. Start doing it, you know, and then you'll start to see what you need and what you're lacking, and you'll start to hear that digital harshness and learn how to deal with it first with plugins. And then when you're ready for analog gear, that'll make your workflow so much easier. Just putting every time I buy a piece of gear, I think, it's not going to make that much difference, and I go back and forth with whether I should buy it, and I'm always happy I did. So I really don't understand these videos where people are saying, oh, you can't hear that much of a difference, because it's huge. Even if it's just on one track, I always hear the difference, but the way it adds up for a song is just, it's such a big difference that you can't hardly describe it. So I'm trying to show you some examples here. Leave me a comment. Tell me what you think about the way we can make music now and get it out to the world, the way we can come on YouTube and talk about what we're doing. Do you feel like it's a good thing? Do you feel like you're being shut down and nobody's getting to see or hear your stuff anyway? You just got to be persistent. Get it out there, man. Work. It's meant to be fulfilling internally. You know, you don't need it from the external. And if you're doing it right, hopefully the external will come as well. So we'll be back with another video soon. This is what I do, man. This is what I love to do. I love to make music. I love to talk about music. And, you know, all this studio shit is fun to me. And it's a way to get what I'm feeling inside out. It's a lot of things. It's a therapist, you know. So we'll be back with another one real soon.